we want to go back to basics. For some of you will be probably as well versed as we are, but we wanted to take it back a little bit, just for understanding. We're going to start here. And it's basically about what does the foundation, what it is, what it does, and then we'll have a little break for a second. And then we'll talk about why, as Rotarians, we're asked to consider supporting it as one of our charities of choice. And then we'll move on to how we can do that. We're not going to get too much into the mechanics because we're going to bring Bill in the second half to talk more about the specialists and the grants and things like that. But we're also, during the first part, we're also going to show you what the impact and the size of the foundation was during 1920 Rotary year, the sort of monies that was donated by us all to the funds. So if you don't mind, we'll move on. And I want to start with this little video, if I can get it. There's always a technical challenge with these things. Can we make it work? So let's hope this will play for you. Just before we go on, I just want to mention, as we all know, what's going on in Ukraine. It's very focused on our mind. There's humanitarian aid that's needed over there. And also sort of comes to the forefront, but this obviously the foundation, what it does is also going on all around the world. But we will get to Ukraine as we go through the presentation, and we'll explain a little bit of how Rotaries and the foundation is trying to help with that. So as you can see, a little bit of history of how it was formed. Arch Clump, one of the original Rotarians, when it was his conference in 1917, they proposed, they had some money left, and they proposed that they set up this foundation. In 1929, they done their first gift, and they also made it, it had its own entity within within Rotary. And then you can see moving along, it got bigger and bigger. In 1978, they had these 3H grants, which were really big at that time, $300,000 grants. They started doing them. And the first one, which if you can see there, was actually the start of the Polio Plus program, when Rotarians in the Philippines had decided to try and start this big program to eradicate polio. And that then turned into the start of the Polio Plus programs. The whole foundation and what it supports is based around the 7 areas of focus. As you can see there, it lists them all. And the last one it used to be 6 areas of focus, but in the last couple of years, as with many, as we know in the world, it's become a big focus, was protecting the environment. That one was added a couple of years ago. So everything they do all has to have some meaning within these 7 areas. So we go to the Rotary programs, we'll break them down a little bit. Some of the main ones for you, again, some of you will know them all, but we'll go over them. The one that we all recognise, the big one that we're known for around the world, is obviously End Polio Now. And here's some facts of it, as where it is at this time and what is done over the period. You can see how many children have been vaccinated. Last year, we can see that there's still only 2 countries that are left to conquer, shall we say. Obviously, COVID gave them some challenges, but they think they've still got they're on track, and you can see the significant help we've had from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They started this program that they would match 2 to 1 what we as Rotarians raise, or either ourselves or the clubs, and they're still doing it to this day. Now, one of the things that we've heard some Rotarians say, that we don't always get recognised. Other organisations get recognised for what they've done for polio. I've got one slide here I've put in because I would like you to see it. Now, this is the World Health Organization's off their own website. And if you put in polio and what they're doing and where it all comes from them. But I would like you to recognise that Rotary is right along there, publicised for what we do and what we have done. So I think that's very good to see from our point of view, that the world does know that Rotary comes through and each one of us supports that. This is what they call the annual fund. This is the one where all the grants come from, where a lot of the money is channeled for the programs. That's where most of the grants come, and that supports local and international grants through the share system. Contributions are credited to the donors or clubs and applied to the club's TRF goals. We'll talk about the goals a bit later in the presentation. And like I said, grants, district and global. And you can see here, district grants in 1920 were approved for 490 districts. Just as a little side thing, we are District 1010, and there is actually 535 districts in the world. So you can see 495 districts got funds for themselves to distribute within their own, for their own clubs and projects that they support. Global grants, they're bigger. Not so many of the local clubs do them, but you can see again that 95 million was spent on almost 1,400 global grants in 1920. Here's a few examples. Bill's obviously going to talk more to these. This is a few examples of some of the grants that have been done recently in our district. And you can see again, they filter back towards the 7 areas of focus. They all have an association within that, but it helps us help our own community locally, while those bigger grants are usually working internationally. Again, reviewing in 1920, you can see there 126 million was given to the annual fund. And there's an interesting statistic there, 31% of Rotarians support the annual fund. So it's very good. Now, this is the one that we were just talking about before. Historically, Rotary never done disaster response grants. We are not what they call a first responder non-profit. We tend more to support projects that come later. But in the last few years, we have had so many, shall we say, disasters, you know, the COVID was one. We've had earthquakes, various things like that. And districts around those affected areas have asked for support. And our district actually got a COVID grant of $25,000 recently. But we're going to move on. And like I said, this is what Rotary is talking about. I mean, obviously, everybody's trying to help Ukraine, and associated with the refugees going in other countries. And we can see there is many ways of donating your money. But Rotary are going to support the clubs and districts in those areas with funds. And anything we donate, we choose to donate, we can give it anywhere we want. But some might want to give it to Rotary, and that will go to clubs that will spend it within the areas that they need to try and support possibly the refugees. It might be in Ukraine. It might even end up back in the UK when there's refugees come here in our areas, and we maybe want to try and help them. So you can see there what it says: anything donated to the disaster fund. And now at this point, I'm going to ask Heather, is there anything you would like to say on behalf of the district or that towards what this is? Have you had, I know you were talking about it, but is there anything?
Yeah. So a couple of things just on that then, Tony. Cass sent out on my behalf on the 5th of March, which was Saturday, just on the afternoon of Saturday. Every member of clubs within the district will have received a direct mailing. There's 2 newsletters that have come out from Rotary Great Britain and Ireland, and there was a whole host of information and lots of queries from clubs. So we wrote out on Saturday afternoon, really just to try and summarise what the key points were for clubs, signposting you to the links. But the long and the short of it is that the Rotary Great Britain and Ireland have a task force that's been created to provide a coordinated approach for Rotary to the crisis, with a focus particularly on displaced people, both leaving and within the Ukraine. And so that task force working with a number of Rotarian groups and districts supporting the Ukraine. And there is, as you've said, that central disaster response fund now as well established at Rotary international level. And really the best way to get Rotary funds quickly to where they're needed, we have taken the view that rather than gather that within the district, that the best way forward is for clubs and individual Rotarians to contribute directly to the Rotary Foundation UK. And there's links with all of the information on that in the note that I sent out on Saturday, Cass sent out for me. The other things that clubs might want to do is think about supporting Shelter Box and also the Disaster Emergency Committee. As you probably know, the UK government said that they would match fund up to £20 million. The DEC fundraising up to £20 million, but the DEC donations now in relation to the Ukraine have now reached over £100 million, as I understand it. So it is likely that club members will get more information in relation to Rotary Great Britain and Ireland. However, all of the information really that you need to work out what you might want to do as an individual Rotarian and as a club is contained in that note that we sent out on Saturday. The last thing that I'd want to say is that at district level, we were encouraged to look at how we might be able to consider the use of unallocated district designated funds to support relief efforts. And in our district, we've explored that, and we'll be making a donation at district level of £20,000 directly to support the displaced people of the Ukraine. Thanks, Tony.
Fantastic. I'm sure everybody will be very proud in the fact that we're helping towards it, and appreciate what district's doing for us. So, is there any questions on that at the minute?
Hi, can I just ask a quick question, please?
Of course.
Hi, I'm Chantal Remy, and I belong to the Rotary Club of Glenrosses. So in relation to the funding going to the DEC, Heather, do they receive tax relief? You know, how do you call it? The tax aid?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
If you tick the box when you send your money in.
Okay, that's fine. No problem. Thank you.
Good question. Thank you.
Could I ask
Tony,
a
that would
question,
need to be individual contributions. It
Yes,
couldn't be a club
yes, sorry.
contribution.
Thanks for
Sorry.
your correction, Kath.
Could I ask a question, please? Ryan Bond of Rotary Club of Bankery Turnen. How much do we know about the value of shelter boxes in the Ukrainian situation? It's not going to keep people warm living in a tent, but
No.
that's the only concern I have.
Ryan, you're right. I believe Shelterbox have sent a couple of their own people there first to evaluate the need. You know, you're quite right. They're not going to send Shelterbox there. That's not going to get used. That's a waste of funds. But what Shelterbox sometimes do is they break the boxes and send certain things. Could be some warm clothing. It could be water. It could be purification things. So they are evaluating at this point. But again, that's an avenue that, you know, you can go on their website and see what they think.
Okay, I was just wondering because we're holding a coffee morning on Saturday, at which the coffee and cakes will be free of charge, but donations are invited so that I, as treasurer of the club, can claim gift aid back on the donations that go in the pot. And I think that sort of thing usually attracts a bit more money anyway than just charging £3 or £5 for a cup of coffee. But I can just hear the cynics now coming along and say, what the hell is the use of a tent in that cold weather?
You've got the answer for them then. So good luck with that fundraising effort.
No, that's yeah, absolutely. Good luck with that, Ryan. And I think that is a good answer, and that's obviously why there are various suggestions getting made about how clubs might want to support. I do think the main thing though is looking at cash support if you can. It's a very fluid situation. So for all of the obvious reasons, some of which I've pointed out in the chat, it would be good to do that. Got another question from Doug at Portford as well, please.
So thank you, Heather. I picked up on what Tony mentioned about not being, I took a note of it, not being a first responder, although we have supported disaster response at this, let's call it this, at the second stage, a second responder stage. I did take note as well of the note the other day on Friday or Saturday that came out, where it talks about the Ukraine Crisis Task Force. But as I've read through that, it still seems to refer to inter-country committees and Rotary Fellowship of Health Care Professionals. I don't see any of that helping towards first responder support.
Sorry, Helen, you take it, please.
I can take that one only because I've been speaking recently to Alan Smith, who's heading up the task force at Rotary Great Britain and Ireland. I mean, you're absolutely right, Doug. It's not one thing or the other. I think there's a whole range of things that Rotary as a humanitarian organisation can be doing, and everything that we can do and it's appropriate for us to be doing, we are. And I think having the various avenues in which we can actually support what's going on, then the better. It sounds at one level as if that sort of healthcare, partnership and connection wouldn't mean anything, but actually what it means in practice is mobilising, for example, retired medical professionals or those who are willing to take time out and volunteer to be coordinated through those organisations on the ground to get to those who most need that medical help and support. So actually sometimes those coordination efforts and those connecting up bits and pieces that Rotary is particularly good at can make a real difference on the ground. But the biggest difference that we're going to make on the ground is through the points that I was making about making sure that we get the resources really to those partner organisations on the ground so they can respond minute by minute to what's a pretty fluid situation. So So it's one of a package of measures, and you'll see that all of the task force is also looking at making sure that the donations get to where they're going as well. But good challenge. I hope that's a helpful clarification.
Okay. Thank you very much, Heather. Thank you.
And Doug, just to add to that, everything that Rotary does and everything that it spends money on always goes through the hands of a Rotarian. So some of the things we've got to hope is, like, if I gave you money to spend in your district, you would spend it wisely on the correct things. And that's one of the great things of giving it directly through Rotary to Rotarians, as opposed to us buying lots of things here that have, in all intentions, that we think that are needed, they might not be needed in that particular area. So we're hoping that this filters in the right way. So. No,
I appreciate that, and I don't question the value of any contributions we make to Rotary, but if where our hearts are is to put some immediate support in, then right. It's not necessarily the mechanisms which will get the support there next week.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So,
thanks, Tony.
Thank you. So we'll go on. So our next one of the big funds is endowment fund, and you can see their contributions are professionally invested. This is one where they're trying to build up that fund for a rainy day, shall we say, and only use the interest. And that interest, they're hoping to make it up. You can see there it has over $1 billion in it just now between assets and expectancies. Expectancies are, well, they hope that we don't die soon, but those expectancies are part of our wills and things like that, and promises to them. Their goal is hopefully to get it to 2 billion, and that would throw off earnings hopefully in the region of 50 million a year. That would then go back in to support the programs we've just talked about. So we'll talk a little bit about more of that later. Peace centres, again, it's hard to we can see the importance of these right now. We wish they could really bring peace to the region just now, but unfortunately that's not possible. But it's something that Rotary became big in. You can see the program was started in 2022, and there's been 1,400 fellows put through this. It's like a master's degree in peace and conflict resolution. So it's at 6 centres and 1 professional programme in universities around the world. The one in Britain is the Bradford University, which they specialise in this. And in 1920, they had 69 fellows from 35 countries that went through this programme. And again, they have an initiative to try and have this fully funded by itself, and some people really support this, and they have bequests or donations towards that. So just as a recap here, we're going to have a quick look at what the foundation done, and talk a little bit for a minute about Charity Navigator. Charity Navigator, for those of you who don't know, is the world's largest independent non-profit evaluator. So you can see that 92% of money that is donated to Rotary gets to the funds and the projects that it was given to. And this is a little chart. I'll just give you a second just to have a look at it. They evaluated over 8,000 non-profits in the year. And the rankings account for a charity's efficiency, financial performance, transparency, and accountability. Now you maybe say, oh, why is that important to us? Look where we are. We're 5th out of 8,000 non-profits. Now we can say statistics, there might be some areas that were not as good as others, but to be classed so high up has given us confidence that, again, our money goes to the right place. It's not gobbled up with expenses and overheads. I think in part because a lot of the projects are done by Rotarians, and we all give our time for nothing. But you can see that's a wonderful thing to assure us of where the overhead of our money. So again, just a quick breakdown of the expenditure. You'll see there 362 million was spent in 1920. The biggest chunk of that was on polio plus, and then global grants, district grants, and right down the bottom, the little piece was general administration. So again, a recap, the 490 districts, the funds they got locally, the disaster relief, and the global funds. I'm sure you've seen this before. This is a flow chart on the left. This is the contributions from you and I, from our clubs, from others like Bill and Melinda Gates, that type of thing, and it flows through. And you can see, if we get into the mechanics, we can explain more about how the annual fund works and how the interest comes off, and then the money comes back to our district or goes into the World Fund. And on the right hand side is where all the money comes back out. So just let me have a wee quick look. So that is basically the what. Is there any questions at this point on that? Like I say, Bill will give us more of the mechanics of it in a few minutes. If you don't mind, I'll press on.
Tony.
Right,
I think that's great. I mean, it's just such a good overview, and I think people did ask questions as we went there. So yeah, I would press on, and we can just leave more time for questions and discussions in the latter part of the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to press on. So this is the why. So the why, when we have an RI president, once they've finished their year in office, the next year or the following year, they become the chair of the Rotary Foundation. So here we have the past RI president, Ravi Ravindran. He's the 21 trustee of the Rotary Foundation, and he makes a very great statement here. And if you see what he says, he asks us to think about this. He says, not everyone has the resources to give a lot to our foundation, but everyone can give something. And why do we ask us all to consider making not the Rotary Foundation, not our charity of choice? We ask you to think about making it one of your charities of choice, in that we all have things that we support. We all have things that we believe in. But each and every one of us here tonight know the value of being a Rotarian, the beliefs we have in being a Rotarian, and what goodness we've seen it done, what it means to us. And our foundation is built upon you and I and the clubs supporting it ourselves, our belief in it, and also thinking about a legacy to leave it for others, that you would consider that. And the part that obviously we see the results of it. You know, some people say, oh, I give money and I don't know where it goes, or I don't see what it does. Well, through those district grants, we can see it coming back into our own district, you know, and we can actually be involved in it or see other Rotarians or members of the public being involved. So that's the why. And like I say, we ask that we consider it as one of your charities of choice whenever you're thinking about that. So the how, well, you can choose various ways. When you go on the website, these are some of the main ones. Like we said, the annual fund supports today, the endowment fund supports tomorrow, the End Polio Now, that supports that program. But you can go in for those and donate to any of those areas of focus. So whatever you choose, your money will go that way. One of we talked about goals every year about this time. DG Ken will be doing his training of our incoming presidents. God bless you, and inspiring them all for the year ahead. And we talk about goals for a year. So historically, a Rotary club are asked to consider making a goal of every Rotarian every year. So if, let's say you have a club of 20 members, the goal would be 20 times $100 for each member, and that would be A-Ray. That's what that means. Every Rotarian every year, we would try and give $100. Or we look at sustaining members, which we're getting stronger at, and it's great. That's each one of us individually given $100. And recently we have little pins now to recognize that. Some people like it, some people don't want to promote it. They like to give privately, so that's a great thing. But that's one of the big things. Now, how would you do that? They have what we call Rotary Direct. Now it's done through RFUK, that you can make a standing order. It plans your budget. You don't have to check. You don't have to give it to the likes of Ryan and then he has to write a check because he's the club treasurer and send it in. We can do it directly, so it makes it easier to do. And then we had a lady there ask about gift aid. When you do it direct, you can fill it in and you can tick gift aid, and that gift aid actually comes back to you. So for £6 a month plus that gift aid, you can qualify for to be a sustaining member. So again, the paperwork's all there. Any of us can help you with this, or you go on the RIBI website and it directs you to it. This is one of my favorite ones. I like to promote this. Again, it's one that's not been talked about too much, but it's a big thing. You know, we again coming back to what does Rotary mean to us? How important has it been in our life? And we would like people to consider it. We have various, you know, I've heard various people say, yeah, look, I've got to put my children first and my grandchildren, quite rightly so. But there is some room in there, we hope, for you to think about it. We don't say leave a money, anything that you promise in these legacy type things, your estate is not held to it. It's a promise, and they hope it's honoured. But again, we have specialists that can guide you on that or answer questions. But again, we would like you to think of how important Rotary has been in your life and how you've seen it inspire other people, that maybe as a legacy that would be your way of remembering Rotary. Now we have Rotary likes to say thank you. This is something that as we're closing, I want to touch on, because there is a bit of, shall we say, especially here, misunderstanding about this. This is a thank you for a donation. Nobody, and I'm going to repeat this, you'll see the next slide. I'll wait for the next slide, but you can see the different levels of, as you give, there's recognitions, and it is a thank you. The one big thing, and I'm going to say it now as a changeover, nobody is buying anything. I've heard various things that this Paul Harris Fellow was originally introduced as a thank you and a recognition of an individual donor donating money. You or I were not buying this. We donated, and it was Rotary saying to Kath, here's a Paul Harris Fellow, thank you for donating. This is no different, shall we say, somebody supporting the local performing arts and they pick up a programme and we see inside it, Tony Janetta, we thank you for supporting us. Now, nobody poo-poos that and said, he bought that. They say, thank you for donating it. Please, we've got to consider this the same way. We don't say, oh, a club only gives these out. No, a club does not. A club recognises Ryan, because he's done such a great job as the treasurer, we're going to donate money to the Rotary Foundation. Somebody's donated that money, and we're going to recognise Ryan's good work. Or we're going to recognise someone in the local community with a Paul Harris Fellow. But somebody has donated the money. We've got to get away from what I've heard, and I'm honest, and people can tear me apart. You can come at me with every question you want as I finish this programme. Do not discourage individual people for what they have done. Do not make them feel embarrassed by saying you bought that. Now, if they don't want to be recognised, that's fine. We say quietly to them, thank you. But please do not embarrass them and make them feel alienated that they want to support our foundation. At that, I'll leave this piece alone. But any questions you want to say to me towards that, please do. So with that, I've just, well, here's a little synopsis of it. There's little hands. We're all joined together, helping through foundation. There's what Bill Gates says. There's been an amazing organisation that has been behind this. But it was due to Rotary that the campaign was started. That's him talking about polio. You see in the left corner, the 7 areas of focus. You see the other one on the foundation. So I'm going to leave us with just a little video. And at the bottom while you're watching the video, you can see my contact details if you have any questions.
Rotary has never backed away from the hardest challenges because we're committed to a better, more equitable world. This year is no exception. Staying away from people and places we love in order to keep them safe. And despite the challenges, your generosity continued. Your donations provided more than $7 million to fund coronavirus relief projects in communities worldwide. And thanks to you, citizens of Kigali, Rwanda have their first public library. Women in rural Costa Rica are enriching their communities through social entrepreneurship. At-risk kids in Puerto Rico have an artistic outlet to heal their emotional traumas. Rotary and its partners have reduced 99.9% of polio cases worldwide. Thanks to you, the Rotary Foundation raised $408 million last year. So together, we can keep doing good in the world. Donors who take action help create lasting change. Our work isn't possible without you.
That's my piece finished, but I just want to remind you I have lots of information of how you can donate, or if you have questions, we talk about legacy sort of thing. If you want any information or questions, like I say, please contact me. I'd more than love to speak to you one-to-one to help explain it. I'll pass it back to you, Heather, if you're still with us, or...
Heather's not actually still
Right.
with us. Heather's asked me to take over hosting. She's had to go off too. I think it's
Kath,
that. Yes.
I'll pass it back to you. There you go.
Thank you. Thank you, Tony. She's gone off to another meeting. And if some of you were in the waiting room for quite a while at 6:30, that was Heather and Ken trying to persuade me to be the host. So I kept you back, but I did you all a favour by not giving you the job. Tony, that was absolutely brilliant. Do you know what?
If anybody's got questions, you can ask them to pitch them as well.
I'll ask people to do that. I just wanted to say I loved your explanation about Paul Harris Fellowship, which I know, of course. But you know, what I liked particularly was that you mentioned no one comments or they applaud you, maybe literally, if you support, say, a theatrical performance. And I don't know if there's anybody on here from Pitlochry or who goes to Pitlochry Theatre, but some years ago, it's nearly 10 now, I supported one of the plays in memory of my mother. And I was tremendously proud to do that. And what you said about Paul Harris today makes me tremendously proud that I am indeed a Paul Harris Fellow, and it's from my contributions. So thank you for that. Thank you also, as I say, for just a brilliant summary of the foundation, which is This can be tricky to summarise. Can I remind people, just in case you overlooked it, the foundation is spending $1 million a day, almost $1 million US. It's a huge charitable organisation. So I'm sure that we've got some questions for Tony and for Bill. Or is Bill going to do Bill, are you going to do a presentation? I've lost Bill now.
No, Kath, if you ask the questions first and we'll see what time we've got at the end.
Right, okay. Now, she forgot to remind me, but Heather is always very eager that we finish at 7:30 on the dot, if not before, because we're conscious of the enjoyment that we have during the time. So let's have questions. Oh, Chantal, you've got your hand up first. Chantal?
Oh yeah, thank you, Chantal again. I wanted to ask, you said that there was an audit and it said 92% of the foundation money went to causes, which is amazing. I'm really proud of that. But a question popped to my head. Where's the 8%? Where did it go? Why is it not 100%?
Because obviously there's overhead for somebody administrating the programs, administrating the paperwork, administrating where it goes. So there is some overhead in Evanston and other areas of the world. I mean, if you think about it, somebody's got to get paid to collect this information, to administrate it, to check it, that type of thing. And obviously, again, there's promotional, they do things, materials, various little bits and pieces as well. Some of that comes there.
Okay, thank you. It still is an amazing number. Well done.
Thank you.
Thanks. Alistair from East Sutherland. And unmute yourself, please. Or you'll have to pay £5 to foundation.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. I think we're seeing you tomorrow night in Dornoch as well. So I'll speak to you personally about some things then. But one of the questions that keeps coming up with us is the separation that seems to exist between polio and all the work we do and the money we give in towards polio and foundation. One minute it seems to be part of foundation, but we don't get credit for it in our foundation giving. It's taken separately, as I understand it.
Well, they're basically two different things within the one. You're right to say that, but you do any contributions that you make. We just talked about Paul Harris there, and that as an individual, or if the club's given money, the points all add up to the same thing. $1 to polio, $1 to foundation, the annual fund means $2 that you donated. But we'll go back just briefly. I'll go back to the goals that clubs makes, and polio historically, again, in some ways, was they asked the club, because we couldn't all keep giving our own money. They kept saying, well, some Rotarians were kickbacks. We've got to say, we can't give for everything. That you and I, as the club members, the goal was $100 a year we would give to the foundation, and the club would do a separate fundraising effort from the club, not from the individual Rotarian, of it was actually $1,500 to give them the goal of trying to raise this 50 million a year. 35,000 clubs. If each club could raise 1,500, basically £1,000 an hour, and if they could do that as a club, the Rotarians separately do the ERI, or the sustaining membership. So that's how it got split up. But collectively, the money counts. It does count as your contribution. Does that help?
Yes.
A little. I know it's
a little.
Somebody mentioned in chat that it's hard to get to grips with it straight away. But like I say, I'd be happy to do a Zoom meeting another time with other people to try and help explain it.
I'll talk to you tomorrow night in Dornoch.
Okay, Tom, you've got a question, I see.
I have, Tony. Yes, thank you. We spoke a few minutes ago about the administrative costs, which I am quite pleased to hear are that low for the foundation. In 2 days' time, my club in Aberdeen Balgownie will be discussing again our wish to help the refugees. Now, if we were to go through the channel, one of the channels you mentioned, I believe, was the Disaster Response Fund. Have I got that right?
Yes, that's on the
Okay.
RIBI website.
Yes, I'm sorry about that. It took me a few minutes to get my speakers hooked up here, so I missed a bit of the presentation. But can we assume that that will be the same sort of level, 8% administrative funds, and most of what we give?
I would suspect that it will be 100% on that particular fund, because it will be administrated straight to Rotary clubs. I think they'll try and make an effort that will be 100%.
That is, that's exactly what I was hoping to hear. We are hearing that the various organizations have got a tremendous amount of goods and material, and they need money to pay for transportation to get the goods and material to places they're needed. So that's good. Thank you for that, Tony.
Thanks very much, Tom. Robin from Forfar, I think you've got your hand up.
Kath, it was actually in response to what Heather was saying about the district sending 20,000 to the UK fund for resettlement of the Ukrainians. Now, can Rotary clubs add to that, to the Rotary, that amount of Rotary sending?
Robin, Bob, Bill, do you want to answer it? Well, I'll just answer it.
Well, quickly, I'll answer it. So Heather made it slightly, she said the money, but it's actually $20,000 it's coming.
Dollars, I mean, yeah, well.
Yeah, so because foundation deals in dollars. But yeah, you can, clubs can send money to the disaster relief fund directly if you go to Rotary Foundation UK. And that will add to that 20,000 that district is sending.
Right.
And individuals can do it as well. And individuals will get tax benefits if they pay UK tax.
Right.
Robin, partly to answer your question also, anything that goes through RIBI ends up with the Rotary Foundation in America. The foundation is based in America. The reason it goes through RIBI is back to that tax gift aid. You know, if you sent it straight, if you went on Rotary International site, you can make a donation, but it's a straight donation of the money. Going through RIBI, we have this mechanism that the British government allow non-profits to get that 25% extra that you and I, if we're still taxpayers, we just click the little button and the little box, and that adds to our contribution. That's why it goes through RIBI, but then it goes across to America, and then it's all distributed around the world from there. That helps.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Robin. Thanks, Tony, for answering that. I don't see any other hands up. Oh, yes, I do. John from Alloa.
Evening, everyone.
Evening, John.
Very interesting presentation tonight about the fund. Can I ask just a question about because Ukraine's actually quite topical at the moment, and I don't think for a minute that this issue is going to get resolved in the next 2 or 3 weeks. I think there's going to be a constant demand and a constant need for support. So if we've actually going to be all contributing across the United Kingdom into this fund, do you think that the various clubs across the UK will be having different initiatives, bike rides, community events, coffee mornings, etc.? And is that going to then create an opportunity to then market the value of what Rotary is actually doing to the, for the community, so we can actually have one central place that we can look for in the UK to say, this is how much we've raised for the Ukraine appeal through Rotary Foundation. And then we can all actually then replicate that and communicate that on our websites. So we have that consistent look and feel, consistent message, and actually help and try and bring in more support.
I think in answer to that, it'll only be possible if some way the clubs notify. But RI will know how much money is going into this fund. You know, these contributions going through the UK, they'll know all that fund. But I think one thing we've not to lose track of, because obviously, like you said, and it's very hard not to right now because it's so close to home, the foundation also supports many other programs. So, and it was a bit like COVID. We thought, is this going to affect everything else? It didn't. But obviously we're going to direct a lot of our efforts towards Ukraine right now. But there's also the other programs in the world that the foundation supports. And you know what they say, unfortunately, we supported it yesterday, we supported it today, the bloody thing's still there tomorrow. We still need to try and support them tomorrow. Thank you for that question. Does that answer it, John?
It does. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. I'm conscious of the time. Bill, there's about 6 or 7 minutes left. Do you want to say something? Possibly better with your microphone on.
I just wanted to say that I wish my presentations about foundation were as good as the one that Tony's just given. I think this just shows Tony's huge enthusiasm for foundation, why he's such a valuable member of the foundation team. I had been going to just show some photographs of work projects within this district, which I think we're going to run out of time, so I'll skip that, and maybe I'll get an opportunity another day. Just to say, one of the aspects of foundation that Tony mentioned was the Peace Scholars, and we are going to be lucky enough to have a Peace Scholar from Bradford at our district conference in June. And actually, we might have 2 Peace Scholars because we were awarded distance host status to look after these Peace Scholars. So it'd be good to see these 2 ladies there. Yeah, so nothing else. I think that's it, and just to thank Tony again, and foundation team will be glad to help clubs and individuals in any way to support foundation. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Bill. And just to re-emphasize the thanks to both of you and to the whole team, because I know that working on foundation takes time. It takes time to ensure that grants go through and that the DDF is used well. So we much appreciate that, particularly Bill, as you finish the 3 years at the end of June that you've served as the chair of foundation, which is brilliant. Thank you very much for doing that. Tony, I think you've set yourself up for lots and lots
That's all right. That's all right.
Lots and lots of presentations. Can I remind you all of the wonders of Zoom? You know, once upon a time, if you wanted the foundation person, they had to travel and all this. Now, I'm sure people are still willing to travel, but people can easily be zoomed into meetings. And I think I heard Tony saying that he was willing to do that. I'm sure Bill is as well. Okay,
on a cheap date. That's the good thing with Zoom. You don't even have to buy a coffee or a breakfast or a lunch.
Right. So it's just coming up. It'll be 7:30 in a moment. Thank you very much. We've had a great attendance tonight. 55 people on just now. We had more on and people have joined and left during the evening. I suspect we might ask you again, Bill and Tony, for some sort of presentation in due course, and maybe to look at the photographs, Bill, of some of these fabulous projects that are going on. So many thanks on behalf of Heather, who is sorry to be away. Tony wants to say something. Or
just one thing, we'll have a table, hopefully maybe district assembly, but definitely district conference. So we'll be there in person for good or bad. That, you know, we can try and answer questions. We'll have leaflets. We'll have different things to hand out. So we'll look forward to seeing plenty of people and trying to answer their questions.
Thank you, Tony. Thanks again, Bill. Thanks, both of you. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming along, and have a good evening. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.